Hey, Trailblazers. In this episode, we're sharing how to get celebrities and influencers to help you get the word out about your business and your products with Ishveen Jolly. So stick around. If you want to build a legitimate, profitable online business without shiny objects, without the hypey gimmicks, and without the stress and overwhelm, if you want to make more money without having to be present online all day, every day, pumping out content that nobody sees and hustling DMs to generate leads and sales, then this is the place for you. Welcome to the Digital Trailblazer Podcast, your online business university, where you'll learn how ordinary people start from ground zero with no influence, no email list or audience to sell to, and no business or marketing experience, and go from working 9-to-5 jobs to building successful 6- and 7-figure online businesses and all the steps in between. Learn the strategies that worked and what didn't. Learn the mistakes that they made and how to avoid them, and then learn their plans for scaling their businesses and taking things to the next level. All so that you can build your business faster and easier and make more money without sacrificing the things that are important to you in your life. I'm your host, Leah Ray Getz, and with me is my husband, Todd. Now, let's get to it with today's guest. Hey, Ishveen, we're super excited to have you with us today. This is kind of an interesting conversation. We've dove into a lot of different things around internet marketing and getting your brand out there, generating leads, but this isn't a topic that we've really dove deep into significantly. So I'm excited to talk with you about this today. Before we get into the weeds of all of it, can you give a little background for the audience, just a bit about yourself and why you are an expert in this topic?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on. So quick background, I'm British, but the company is based in America. So we'll obviously talk a lot about American sports and American way of selling. I started, I was a management consultant, and then I became a sports agent. And that's where I fell in love with what today is influencer marketing, what we used to call sports sponsorship. It's all a bit gray, but fell in love with sponsorship as a form of marketing. The idea that like a business could pay another team, event, league, athlete, the ability to, combine forces and get your message out in a sexier way than what you can say yourself. About 10 years ago, realized that, that it was like Airbnb was coming up and Uber and all of that. And I thought, well, why is there not one of those for our industry? It's a $60 billion industry. Very naively thought I could do it with my tech co-founder. 10 years on, we are the largest. It's been a fun journey. And so just super passionate about the power of sports and the power of like culture and how can businesses align with that for a win-win.
That's awesome. So just for definition's sake, before we get into the strategies and everything else, can you explain like influencer marketing? What does it look like and how are people using it today?
Yeah, essentially it's the idea that, I actually call it like the new word of mouth or like the online word of mouth. So essentially what you're doing is like you have either a product, physical, or a service. You have something, and the whole idea of marketing is that you want other people to know about it, right? And we used to use TV and we used to use billboards, and obviously in the recent past, it's been like a lot of Facebook and everything else. Influencer marketing is the idea that like you find someone who is connected to your brand authentically, ideally. So like, are they in your location or do they have that problem that you are solving for? And you essentially get them your product or service in an authentic way, and then they go out and speak about it on their social feeds, but also in a way that you can use that content and repurpose it. And therefore it's the same as an ad, but it's by someone who is not a model, but someone who's experienced your product.
Yeah. And what do you find is sort of the unique power of this type of marketing over other elements or other types?
Yeah, I think there's two things. So I think one is, and I split it up before, but I'll keep doing that, which is like what they organically do, what they do, and then what do you do with their influence, right? With their name. So one of the biggest benefits is that back in the day, you had to put stuff on TV or a billboard, you had to buy a medium. Today, if you work with a college athlete that has 50,000 followers and they post something, ideally, all 50 could see that, right? I mean, obviously it's not like that, but like, I think there's an element of like, you're buying their audience, and that audience hopefully is also interested in, and that's why you pick them, right? Because it might be the person's interesting, or it might be their demographic is interesting, or it could be your followers. So I think you're buying an audience. So that's one, that's really interesting. But the second is the fact that you are using their name, their power in your brand. And so, a great example there is like, we were very lucky. We got Serena Williams as one of our investors. And of course she gave us money and that was amazing. But at the end of the day, like the power of just being able to say that she believes in our business is paramount. And so I think it's like the same thing of like how you're getting someone else and saying, well, we've done stuff with like student housing. And it's like, well, if they live in our housing, then you should too. So it's being able to like say like, if this person can do it, so can you. And that's like testament.
What kind of products and services does this work really well for? Because I assume that there's some things that are probably harder to get them to promote and some things that are probably not too hard.
Yeah, it's actually a great question because obviously everyone gravitates to, well, oh, you must do really well for like sports products and recovery products and nutrients and supplements and protein shakes and all that, which I would say we do very well with them. But that is more so because kind of what you said, like they can imagine it. And it's like, oh, well, I know that AG1 became famous for this, or I know that Theragun became famous for this. So if I'm going to launch a product, I'm going to follow their playbook. But I would actually say what's funny about it is if you think about sports sponsorship, where I came from, the brands on the outside of these stadiums, or the brands that have been leveraging sponsorship, were actually like oil and energy and like telecoms and software, and AWS is the biggest sponsor of NFL, like because of data. And so I think what's interesting is I like to say, like, give me a category and we'll find the fit. So for example, like and it might not always be like true authenticity. It could be something else. So for example, like we did a deal with Glassdoor and they just wanted to get more brand awareness. They wanted to like do something. They're based in San Francisco. So they had Draymond Green from the Warriors, like do like a blog post that he attached his name to. And it was like, Draymond Green's like 8 tips to keep your workplace fired up. And they put that blog out, they put it on LinkedIn, and it had like, I think it was like a 950% increase in shares and opens, which you can imagine, right? Because most of their other blogs are like, don't have a Warriors player aligned to them. So I think it's like, it's obviously easy to see, well, if it's a product that an athlete will use, great. But I would say like any service probably has a fit to some element of sports, whether it's failure, whether it's resilience, whether it's retirement, whether it's like not going broke. You know, athletes are people and they have lives. And I think those are actually some of the really interesting stories as well.
So is this mostly for physical products and software and things like that? Because I know a lot of our audience, they sell online courses, they do coaching programs. So if someone were a life coach or a health coach or something like that, could you find a fit for someone like that?
Yeah, we've done some really interesting things. So we did something with like a wealth advisor once, and it was like, you're a great wealth advisor. How do you get yourself out there? And so I think, and this is where interesting deliverables come in. So I think we got him on the podcast of like a previous NFL star, Rashad Jennings, talking about what is finance and like, you know, and that was again, like that was like positioning him in a kind of interesting way as an expert. So he's having this one-on-one chat with this NFL player. Life coaches, obviously, so many athletes, they retire and then they're like, well, what do I do with my life? So what I think what's hard is like the money aspect there, because the life coach is probably like, well, I don't have a huge budget. What can I do? So I think that's where we try and tap into that authenticity where like, is there an athlete? Like, yes, you might have to pay them a couple of $1,000s up front, but like, is there an athlete who, because you've paid them, you can now record snippets of your coaching and then put it out there, and that creates like virality and they share it. And so I think there's always a way to integrate. It just comes down to like that, what is the cost? And I think that's what we also, that why I touch on the authenticity is because if you try and just pay anyone and they're not interested, you have to pay top dollar. Like the way we do it on our platform is like, we'll put up a job posting. So are you thinking about retiring and struggling with what to do next? Well, here's a service. Do you want to use it? And so you only need one great person to be your brand ambassador. And that's kind of what we're looking for.
So that's interesting. So it could just be something as simple as putting out a helpful piece of content out there, and then the celebrity or the athlete is just sharing it on their social.
Yeah. Well, we've actually recently been even thinking about like LinkedIn, because a lot of athletes now are joining LinkedIn. Like I follow a lot of like international soccer, and like Patrice Evra, he's very funny. If anyone follows like soccer football, like they'll know. But there's so many like was it Steph Curry? I think he's got a LinkedIn page. So like LinkedIn is doing a lot of work to get like these celebrities coming in to create content. So if you think about it, like imagine an athlete who's got lots of followers on LinkedIn putting something out that's like, hey, this is where I go. It's like customer acquisition plus brand awareness plus something cool.
I actually saw content like this. Marie Forleo and her B School. She had an actress that I always get her mixed up because there's 2 of them that look a lot alike and I can never tell them apart. But one of them went through her B School and there was clips of an interview and how it impacted and how she was not just looking at her acting as acting, but it was looking at her brand as a business and how to put all these things together. So Marie Forleo's doing it. She's been in the info product space forever. Like, she's one of the OGs out there. So clearly this can work in this type of space.
I would also say, I think what's really interesting is you meet a lot of smaller shops and they'll say, we already have celebrities and athletes and influencers using us. Like, they're already our customers, but we're not allowed to say it because we don't pay them. And I turn that around and go, well, pay them something and use it. Like, we've got so many brands that will come to us and they're like proper products and they're like, we're in the locker room for all these NFL teams, but we can't tell anyone that we are in these locker rooms because that's an endorsement deal and we'd have to pay $1 million. And I'm like, okay, well, go and pay an athlete to say, you could get like the backup quarterback and pay them like $3,000 and be like, for them to be like, that, like, this brand's in our locker room. And so I think it's like a lot of times people don't want to be like so commercial or transactional, but like that's what sponsorship is. And that it's a win-win. Like, they already use you, go and pay them a little bit of money and use their name.
So as far as cost, what can you expect to pay for different levels of endorsement or exposure?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's like 3 variables. So what are you asking them to do? Obviously, the more I want you to post every month on social media is going to cost a lot more than like, hey, I'm just going to take some images of when you do something with me and I'm going to promote it. Second is like how big they are. And like that, there's a lot of like, is their engagement rate and like what's their social following, but also like what credibility do they offer? Do they even want to do sponsorship deals? And then the third is like, what's the fit with your offering? So, and how much does someone want that? So I would say for us, like 10 to 20% of our deals are product exchange. I'm going to gift you product or a service. Like, we were talking recently to like a dentistry clinic in Turkey and they want to gift like dentist treatment and hair transplants in exchange for. So I think like life coaches as well could be like an interesting one. Like, what's the value? But you could say, well, it's $1,000 worth of my hours, but does someone want that? So I think it's like, it's all over the place. Like, we do deals for free product. We do deals for like $250. And then our biggest deal is like just shy of $1 million. So it really is all over the place. And I think another thing is a lot of time people are like, well, how did they get LeBron James? And it's like, well, you have to work up there, right? Like, you have to start small and like, Theragun didn't, like, yes, you could pay straight away, but it's like, let me use the smaller people. What I love often is like, we did a deal, for example, with one of a WNBA star, and she was on the Fever, and a much more inexpensive, reasonable deal. She's not like the top ones. And Caitlin Clark commented, it was a giveaway. Caitlin Clark like tagged her and like, her partner in it. And I was like, we could never afford to get Caitlin Clark, but like, they're in the locker room together. They all are in the Olympic team together. And I think that's like the fun thing about like this influencer category is like, they all follow each other. And yeah.
So what are important things that, if we think of our audience today, it's a lot of coaches, course creators, info products, digital products, solo online folks doing cool things online. What's important for them to look for in a partnership? Who would be a good partnership? And what are sort of those traits or things that they need to look for to make that work?
I think it's about understanding, taking one step back, which is like, well, what do you need? So are you like newly launched? Like, you need validation, right? Or is it like, no, I've got my validation, I need reach. I just need to be in front of lots of people. And so I'd say, let's take those two separately. So if you're like, I'm just starting my business, then I think it's about finding someone who, like I said, has your need, right? So coach, retirement, wealth advisor, someone who is not very good with money, like nutritionist, someone who has to lose weight. So maybe like you're looking at like categories like boxing or MMA or UFC where you have to stay in a certain weight. So I think it's like finding people who like could be your customer. And it doesn't really matter, I don't think, how big they are, because it's about the journey and the story together. Like, you're almost like creating a case study with an influencer. Let's say you've got that. You're like, no, I got loads of case studies. Then you're basically looking for someone who has the audience, the followership that you want to speak to. So then it's like engagement rate is a great number because it shows how interactive their audience is with them. Their demographic following, like a good way. A lot of people are like, well, influencers have a lot of fake followers. Well, look at their percentage of US following, because then that's quite useful. What do they already talk about? Like, and do they post videos? because there's a lot of athletes who just post stock images of their games. Whereas and I think there's like a huge difference between someone who's like posting their life and everything about them versus someone who's a bit more static.
So how long does the process take? Like if you were to start looking right now for someone to promote your business, as far as finding the person, making the reach out, figuring out what the agreement is going to be to the point where they're actually promoting you, like how long does this typically take?
Yeah, I'd say, are you doing it yourself? Are you doing it with someone like us or like an agency or a partner? I think there's a bit of a difference. And we could talk about that too. So I'd say, look, you can like DM someone on Instagram and hopefully they'll respond. And then you could be like, I want you to do this. They say yes. You could, I don't know, send them money, I suppose. And it could be like a couple of weeks. I would say where people fall down, we meet a lot of people who've tried to, they're like, oh, I did one influencer because either like someone on my board knew someone or like my next door neighbor has a lot of following. So we did this something. And I'd say like the bits where it breaks is like, so the negotiation, like we talked about it, like the deliverables. There's a huge difference even between an Instagram reel and a story. A story lives for 24 hours. A reel stays on forever. But a story, it can have a link. A reel cannot have a link. Videos versus imagery. What do they say in the video? Is it like, hey, this is my friend and they've got a cool thing and here's a 50% off code to their website? Or is it like, I'll give you a great example. We work with Western Union. Their first round of creatives with us, they got like some NFL players and some other like athletes to do more like a infomercial, like Western Union, they're the safe ones, here's their app, and it showed the app and it showed scrolling and everything else. Then our second round of things we did was a bit more emotive. So they got people talking about like what it means to send money back home, what it means to be successful and be able to like, especially like immigrants and like, because that's Western Union, like and we did something for the Mexico channel, the Philippines channel, the UAE channel, and that content was so different and it performs really differently. You can use it in your page really differently. And so I'd say the whole process itself on average takes about 6 weeks, in my opinion, from like you get going. I mean, this is for us, right? So you meet us, we talk about your brief. It takes about a week to get you some names, see how you jive with it. 1 week to lock in, 1 week to send product, and then like 2 weeks to get the content good and live. You're talking about a 6-week process, but it's like the details within that, which is why I think influencer is a bit like the wild, wild west. A lot of business would be like, I have people DMing me saying, hey, I want to work with you, but then it doesn't work. And I think not to be like that scare person, because I think everyone should try whatever. But I think the biggest problem is like your creative matters, the channel matters, how you repurpose the content matters, if you truly are doing it for ROI purposes. The only other thing I'd say is like a bit of an opportunity. I think it's people are tapping into it now, but it is quite interesting, which is like, do you have a business that like could be aligned with someone where you like co-create? So let's say you're like a course creator, say you do like, I don't know, parenting things. There's an athlete out there who's about to become a parent. I mean, we see it a lot in the product world, right? Where it's like, co-brand like Walmart's line, but or like Kim Kardashian with Nike with Skims. But like, could you be creative and create a line with an influencer that's like for their specific needs? So like the retirement plan for people who are changing careers at 35, right? And like it's in conjunction, if you had all the money in the world, it would be like in conjunction with Tom Brady, and he talks to you about like becoming a whole different persona or whatever else. And so I think that could also be like a really interesting thing, the way to think about influencers is like versus them just promoting you, how do you become like one, like a true partnership? And of course we see it a lot, like celebrities sell. But if they're just an influencer, it's sometimes harder. So how do you make it like, it's very difficult because you obviously want to do a rev share with no like guaranteed up front. But so it's definitely like a finesse, like a bit of a thing. But we see it a lot. Again, we see it a lot in the product world. And I'm surprised that we don't see it more in the world that you're talking about, especially because like Airbnb, they launched all those experiences, or like Masterclass has launched all these courses, and they do with celebrities. So if you're creating courses, like it makes sense to like use celebrities the way that Masterclass or Airbnb is.
So beyond the typical influencer marketing situation, is there an opportunity for info product people, coaches, that sort of thing, to maybe have more longer term partnerships with influencers or celebrities?
Yeah, 100%. I think, as we were saying, like in the product world, you see it a lot. I think there is someone who has a need for your product. And I think athletes and influencers have a lot of needs. For example, like I've just become a influencer. I need to sell myself. I probably need a sales coach. I need to have investor meetings because, like if you think about some of the most Mr. Beast, like he was an influencer and then he became a production person and then he's got all this wealth amassed and then he needs to like figure out what to do and all of this stuff. So I think, in fact, it was interesting. I went to an event recently and it was like advisors around athletes and I had no idea how many people surrounded like these athletes and influencers, like tax people, because if they play a game in France for the NBA, they now have to pay tax in France. And I was like, wow. Or like, how do athletes find houses, right? They can't just turn up and like, there's all these like different things. And, we talk like, how do they become parents? It's like different, like, and whatever else. So I think there's like all these opportunities to add value to them, but then have them attached to it because they're more passionate. And it was surprising for me to see. So Airbnb did a deal with the Olympics. And as part of that deal, what they did is have loads of Olympians this was during COVID. They had loads of Olympians do online courses as part of the Airbnb experience. So you could like, the 10-minute meditation workshop with certain athlete or whatever else. And so I thought that was super interesting. And you see it like masterclass or intro where they're sitting on like, because I don't know how many times you see athletes speak, they're amazing, right? Like the resilience, the getting back from failure, the like becoming a millionaire when you're like 18 years old and having to play with someone that there's all this stuff. So I think what's difficult is to try and make that business model work because there's a lot of layers in between. So I would say, I imagine the perfect business model, what we've seen is where there is, again, like some sort of like upfront guarantee because like you believe in it. And then you do a rev share, like an affiliate on the back of that. And I love the affiliate because it means that they are incentivized to keep doing it. But the upfront is necessary because there's not a person in the world who wouldn't want to do a deal with a rev share deal with someone famous with no like
the skin of the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So beyond the initial exposure and promotion, what are some other ways that you can use that in your marketing and leverage that in your business later on? Like, for example, if I'm doing a webinar, is that something I can promote in a webinar later on? And does that need to be written into the contract that you can do that? Or what are the details about using that in your future marketing efforts?
Good question. So there's some stuff that's strict and then there's some stuff that's like quite loose. So like typically every deal that we do comes with rights to use the name, image, likeness of the person that you've worked with anywhere between 3 and 12 months. And that means like putting it on your website, right? So let's say that you sell courses through different channels, that you also may have like a 30-page like intro book on Amazon. That's like $1 just to promote whatever you do. So now you can suddenly have like a quote underneath that's like by that athlete or like says, partnered with. So you can get really creative about how you, again, like that's why I love this because back in the day it was just a TV ad. Whereas now it's like, the amount of content you can put out. What was it like working with this person? And there's so many ways, like you put it on LinkedIn and you're like, I'm partnering with this person and that itself will go viral. So I think there's like loads of ways to just use the name, image, and likeness. And then there's obviously the content that they produce and you can use that for like 3, 6, 12 months. PR, like going out, like we try and write into our deals if you're really savvy, like secure the person for like 5-minute interviews for PR. And then you go out and go to like Business Insider or whoever, and you're like, hey, I want to tell you about my business, but also you can interview this famous person for 5 minutes about this topic and like maybe give me a backlink kind of thing. So it really is. I mean, I suppose most of your listeners are quite entrepreneurial, which is like actually really fun because it's like, I mean, also like go to ChatGPT and be like, I'm about to sign this person, like Travis Kelce, like what can I possibly use him for? How many ways? There's infinite amount of ways. And that's really like sponsorship is always worth it if you fully utilize all the rights.
Okay. So there's a time limit on how long you can use that for. So after that time limit expires, do you have to delete that stuff off your social or does it get to live there?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a little bit gray because back in the day, obviously, if it was a TV billboard or whatever, it would just come down. Typically, no one asks you to delete from social because it was posted in the back date when it was. You can't really keep repurposing it. Having said that, not that I am saying people should do this because it contravenes contracts, but like no one's like slapping your wrist for like going like throwback to when we partnered. I think it's like if you're saying it in a way that's like they're not representing me today, throwback to when we had this person as our brand ambassador and here's the content that we use. fine. On the website, often you have to take it down if it's like a digital signature or whatever else, because it's past the rise. But also at the end of 12 months, like just do it again with someone new, or repeat the deal. So
This has been such an interesting conversation. We really appreciate you. If people want to check you out or learn more about you or the company, where should they head?
yeah, opensponsorship.com. Sign up for a free account. We'll reach out and we'd love to chat to you about our ideas for you and what we've done in the space. And then obviously for me, like LinkedIn.
Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to the Digital Trailblazer podcast. For show notes and information about today's guest, head to digitaltrailblazer.com. Now, if you love this episode, if you got some value, make sure you leave us a review and subscribe. And be sure to share this episode with anyone you know who could use help to build their business. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.